So we should know how to evaluate functions, and we should know function notation, right? Right here, we have the function f of x. It's a machine, right? You plug in inputs, you get out outputs. Here's your g of x function. This is the g of x function. You can plug in inputs, get out outputs. And this function notation, f of 2, is telling you to use the f function. So let me rewrite the f function. It's really 2x minus 6. But instead of 2x minus 6, I write 2 parentheses minus 6. Everybody understand that? That's the first step of evaluating functions, especially when they're written in function notation. The f is just telling you that you're using this guy. The g is telling you that you're going to use this guy. So what do? You rewrite it, but instead of x's, you put parentheses. Now, what goes inside of the parentheses? Well, think about this. The f of x, now f of 2, what visually changed? Your x changed to a 2. So what goes inside of the parentheses? The 2 goes inside of the parentheses. So let's put that 2 right in there, and then we do the math. What is 2 times 2?
4.
And what's 4 minus 6? Negative 2. There's your answer. So number 2, we know we're going to be using the g function because there's a g right there. So we go to this g function and we rewrite this exactly the way it is, x minus x squared, but instead of x's, I'm going to put parentheses. So when I say x minus x squared, I write x minus x squared. Everybody with me? Yeah. You need to use parentheses. If not, you might make mistakes. Now, what is it that we're plugging in? Right here it says g of negative 1. They're telling us to plug in the negative 1 right in there. So plug in negative 1 right into the parentheses. Now it's funny, a lot of you said that the answer is 0, which it's not. Because when you look at this math problem, you got to start with parentheses, and there's nothing to do inside of the parentheses. Then you move on to exponents, right? Some of us might see the minus minus and they want to change to plus plus. You're not supposed to do that yet, because the minus minus changing to plus plus comes from the rule that a negative times a negative equals a positive. It comes from the multiplication rule. And obviously you're going to be doing exponents before multiplying. So you need to actually think negative 1 times negative 1, that's positive 1. So what you really have is a negative 1 minus a positive 1. So the final answer is negative 2. So on number 3, this is function notation, and it's telling us to plug in 7 into our f function. So in order to plug in 7 into our f function, we need to rewrite the f of x function, but with parentheses instead of x. So when I write this down, instead of 2x, I put 2 parentheses and then minus 6. Okay, now inside of that parenthesis, what am I going to plug in?
7.
The 7. So I put the 7 right in there. Now the minus 9, I'm going to wait till the very end. I'm first going to find out what f of 7 really is, and then I'm going to subtract 9 from that answer. So doing the math, I'm going to multiply first. I get 14 minus 6 because of the 6 that's up here. So it's 14 minus 6. 14 minus 6 is 8. So I really have an 8, and then I bring down the minus 9, and 8 minus 9 is negative 1. Now, you will have to be able to do this on your own on the quiz Friday. So on number 4, we have, it looks crazy. And yeah, this is for those that want an A on Friday's quiz. What does it say? It says 2 times something, and inside the something, there's g of b plus 1. Now, PEMDAS says always zoom in and see if you could do anything. So if you were to zoom in inside the brackets, could we do anything here? The only thing we could do is g of b. Now, what is g of b? We're going to use the g function. And normally, if you had a number here, you'd plug in that number and then do the math. So for example, if I had the number 2 right here, if it said g of 2, what would you do? You'd take the 2 and put it right here, and you'd take the 2 and put it right there, right? And you would do the math. Are you guys with me?
Yes.
Okay, but it doesn't have a 2. It has a b. So what am I going to do? Take that b and do what with it? Put it there and there. So the x's become b's because it says g of b, you're going to plug in b. So what I really have for g of b is b minus b squared. And then you have the plus 1. And then you still have the brackets. Are you with me? Yeah. And we still have the times 2 on the outside. So if we still look at the inside, could you combine any of these? No. They're not like terms. I mean, even though this is a b and that's a b squared, you still can't combine them because if it were a b and a b, then you could combine them. But it's a b and a b squared, you can't mess with them. They're not like. So they're not like, so we're going to leave them like that. But there is a times 2 on the outside, and we could distribute that times 2 to each one of those. So I'd have 2b minus 2b squared plus 2. And now the only other thing you could possibly do is, the only other thing you could possibly do is rearrange it and put the highest exponent term first. So negative 2b squared, and then the positive 2b, and then the constant at the very end. So that's the best possible answer. I know that's like way over the top.
Yeah. Is it going to be on the test?
Maybe.